I think we're live. I'm not sure we're live. Ralu, if you can give me a sign. Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. I'm Adrian Erimescu. I'm one of the co-founders of Grow Channel. And today, my guest is Sergiu Negut. Sergiu, thank you for accepting our invitation. You are an entrepreneur with multiple key roles in large organizations and also startups in the past years. But for now, you're probably very well known for the more recent role in FinTech OS as a co-founder there and also as a CSO. So basically, the most recent memory when thinking of you is entrepreneurship, right? How would you present yourself to the world?
I was, because this platform has this funny thing that you have to add a tagline. I simply put what I think I'm good at, which is I'm a business growth strategist, and I think that's it. And now this comes in different ways. I'm not the best or one of the best in operational management. I've never been. I tried it. I got a good salary for it, but I figured there's something else that perhaps I do better, and perhaps it may even get better paid occasionally. But my whole thinking and analysis and all that I cared about was how do you actually grow businesses? How do you bring wealth? How do you? And I absolutely loved your tagline as a company, the La Greu La Grow. And I think this is something that has been on my mind since forever. And whether we talk about, my first assignments as, in general management roles, or you talk about the first mentorship programs that I started to put together, the focus during my MBA studies on what I really cared about, the jobs that I got and the assignments that I got then at board level. When I finally became a consultant, it was a strategy consultant for growth and for innovation and for, bringing the company, if you want, to the next level. So if you put all that together, this is who I am. And then definitely when the way I see my participation in FinTech OS is to basically put your money where your mouth is and start to follow on a first person basis the advice that I would have been given before to others from a capacity of a mentor, from a capacity of a business angel, and so on. Well, it kind of works up to a certain moment. So now that I have this extra experience, I am even more convinced that I can play an active role as a business angel in relationship with companies that I advise, as potentially a, let's say, operational partner for a fund to put together advice for their portfolio, as I don't know, strategic advisor for a company of mid-size that wants to become a much larger size or something like that. So this is if you want who I am. Yeah, what is and of course a lecturer of growth strategy or both growth and strategy for the business school that I'm affiliated to, and that is Bucharest International School of Management. By the way, I'm taking this call from the school in Piazza Dacia. Piazza Spania, sorry, in Bucharest.
So Sergiu equals growth in all the applicable areas, basically.
Yeah, it's growth, I think, more for growth. It's not equal as such. The intent is not a guarantee of success. There are plenty of evidences, if you want, that, yeah, there is a correlation and causality between the two, but there is no guarantee of A implies B.
Yeah, that is a very cool thing to say, actually. Looking at FinTech OS, I know now the headquarters are in London, so I assume you moved from Bucharest to London and spent time in both places. In Europe, London is probably the most evolved entrepreneurial ecosystem. How do things compare? How is the British entrepreneurial ecosystem looking like in comparison with the Romanian one? And maybe you can also focus on the angels, on the business angels. How do they compare?
Yeah. Look, I think I believe in ecosystems, honestly. So I think I'm from a very a small village, or actually a large village, but a village in Baragan in South Romania, and that's called Vadupashi. And for me, Buzău, which is the nearest town, is a larger Vadupashi, and Bucharest is a larger Buzău, and London is a larger Bucharest. So it's all about ecosystems. And the thing is, if you're from the countryside and you go to the big city to do some business or something, you have to know people. And those people need to trust you as if you were one of their own. And this is where, if you want, the basic thing is to have had that kind of working relationship, to have been together through some experience, whether it's school, whether it's working colleagues, whether it's co-investment. But anyway, in situations where we put our minds together to solve a problem or to address an opportunity, and that problem was solved or that opportunity was materialized. And that's what an ecosystem is. So an ecosystem is not necessarily bound by the limits of Bucharest, bound by the limits of London, of New York, of Silicon Valley. And we play our role in multiple ecosystems, and we strive all the time to link into the higher ecosystem that is more resourceful in order to penetrate, in order to give more power, the power of the network, if you want, to the companies that we work for, to the ideas that we generate, to the audience that we want to create. And this is why, if you think of it in terms of ecosystem, yeah, sure, Bucharest is not London, but why not? It is somehow a Manchester or a Liverpool. Actually, I think it's more than a Manchester or a Liverpool, both in economic power and in traction and so on. And similarly, Cluj, Timișoara, Iași, Craiova, Brașov, Sibiu, Oradea. And that's one Romania, and the rest of it is probably a different thing, and it's a bit different. But I think we have created an ecosystem that is fluid enough, is powerful enough, and is connected to the outside enough that we take this discussion in English, if you want. And this connection is getting stronger and stronger every day, and the similarities are larger than the differences. We're no longer in that pioneering stage where we were, let's say, 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago, where we were not sure what we do is how it's called, and we learned it's called, being a business angel. And then we had to differentiate between what a tech angel is versus being one of the 3 F's in a general business. And then we created something that looks like a solid community with a continuous stream of opportunities to invest in, and the continuous stream of investments for a community that has already multiple layers and is already for each of those layers connected to the outside. So the way I see the most important difference at this moment is the complexity of the ecosystem, but understanding that the limitations of the complexity of the local ecosystem are compensated by the connections that the ecosystem has on the outside. If I'm talking specifically of what business angels are and what business angels do, here the difference is probably larger, because we are talking about 30 years of capitalism, probably the last 10 of them being a bit more successful in terms of accumulating capital that is available for investment. Compared to multiple generations of family businesses that evolve into family funds and still leave ample role for some individuals to invest freely out of their own will and in an unstructured way out of the family wealth. Now, this thing of a family wealth is not yet in Romania something that we can, really talk about as multi-generational legacy or something like that. None of that, which has advantages and disadvantages. The most important advantage is related to the fact that we understand business much better than our colleagues, if you want, from the West. This is because we have had,
Why?
all of us, small businesses at some point that grew to be large. And the disadvantage is, because of that, we think we know it all.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And when we look at business angels, there are generally two components that define a business angel. It invests his own money, right? But also he or she brings expertise, brings connections, brings some access to his network. So basically, he made his money building some business, and that knowledge it's forward given to the founder, and thus helping the founder even more than the money itself, right? Are we close in this regard of expertise and network? Because I imagine these 30 years of recent capitalism, basically in Romania, are much less, than the continuous period of growth of business growth that they had in the Western part. So I imagine their expertise, their connections are larger, are more complex than in our case. Is this the case, or it's not?
Yeah, but not necessarily. I mean, it's true to some extent, but not necessarily. I think we are a small enough community. If you're looking at Romanian business angels of any sort, we are a small enough community to be able to work with each other, to kind of know each other, to be very close to one another still. It's a couple of hundred people, probably not more. Maybe a bit more than that if you're including the micro angels that are doing this anonymously and not really communicating with others and working together with others. What I see in larger ecosystems, you see first that the larger ones have already institutionalized it in family funds or in other structures where there are some professionals that are making the investment decisions on the behalf of the owners. And we see the incipient stage of that in Romania with the funds that were made by the larger entrepreneurs like Dedeman or so. And we at the same time you see perhaps the all these efforts being a lot scattered. So people playing the business angel role for much smaller communities that are not interconnected. So in terms of access to a broader ecosystem that really comes with the benefit of making business connections and so on, this tends to be supra specialized in very small verticals, depending to how the angel has originally made their money.
Mm-hmm.
So while for us, being being more visible, if you want, as individuals in the ecosystem, in a smaller ecosystem, we tend to know more people that are helpful outside of the very narrow specialty that we have started from.
And this could become an advantage, right? Because in this high risk asset class, diversification is key, right? So you can maybe diversify into more sectors more easily if you're able to have meaningful links with people that have expertise in sectors you don't have expertise in.
Yeah, it definitely works like that. It definitely works like that. We tend to be more generalist in investments. If you look at also the funds that are made in Romania, and with a large majority of cases, probably with the only notable exception is the one where I'm one of the founders, the Cleverage thing that has a vertical on health tech, and we are still exploring how large that segment is in order to understand how big a fund can be in this particular segment. And definitely then you have to look outside of the borders of Romania in order to make something meaningful in terms of size. So other than this, you see that here people tend to be a lot more generalist. And if you look at what the mainstream Western is pushing for, they're pushing for specialization. So you can't really do tech. Tech is far too general. You can't even do deep tech. Deep tech is far too general. You have to focus. Are you a SaaS focused business? Are you in enterprise B2B? Are you in B2C consumer, fast growing, It's something that requires a certain level of expertise in order for you to claim to have the competence in. Yeah. If you look at the more evolved ecosystems. And frankly, I expect that the Romanian ecosystem is growing that route. And in 5 to 10 years, it will, have multiple streams like that. But we're still living a romantic phase where, we can be the equivalent of the Homo universalis in investment, and use our knowledge of, how to do business here, how to connect the business with opportunities, and how to understand the opportunities at the next level in order to qualify business. Is basically our role as angels, is based, or even as pre-seed and seed investment funds, is basically to start with a company that has anecdotal evidences of being able to sell something to somebody, and grow that into reaching a product market fit for a broader market that does not include only Romania.
Yeah. When did you start investing in startups? When has your business angel, career or adventure started?
I think that the first thing were actually two things that happened in my past at around the same moment. And one is, I was talking to my good friend Mihai Simiuc of different opportunities of creating brands that would be consumer brands that would be accelerated technologically and would have a great traction at some point. And he's a fascinating marketing guy. And he eventually built Frufru, and I ended up investing in Frufru a few years later. But the initial discussions about how, what, when, with whom, and so on were there. The second thing was about at the same time. I've seen Bitnet and Două Parale, Two Performant, the current Two Performant, pitching in one of the first events of technology companies pitching to potential investors, and that was called
Venture something.
Venture something.
Yeah.
Venture Connect, maybe.
Venture Connect, exactly. Yeah.
Venture Connect, yeah. And I met, the people that were at that time close to the Venture Connect ecosystem. Mary Andronic in particular, Malin Ștefănescu, a few people that were part of that environment. And I remember two things, that with both the Logofătu brothers and with Dorin Boierescu, so with Bitnet and with Two Performant, I approached them with pretty much the same phrase, that, hey, I don't think you're worth the money you're pitching for, but I think I see a path where I could probably work a bit with you to help you grow towards that level. And then things evolved quite differently in the two cases, but quite similarly, actually, in both cases. And it's funny because in the case of Bitnet, they found an angel that was willing to pay the price that I wasn't willing to pay. And after that, they said, but we are making an advisory board. Why don't you become a part of that? And as part of that, you get the right to invest a little bit of that of that part in our company. And in the case of Two Performant, it was, okay, why don't we spend some time one-on-one, and you try to consult for me and be an advisor. And then that resulted in me, if you want, syndicating business angel round for Two Performant with in two stages with, I think, 9 of my friends into the first $500,000 investment in the company. And funny enough, years later, both companies converged into getting listed on the Bucharest Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Bitnet being ahead in terms of going to the first market, larger numbers, and so on, and Two Performant coming after, but quite similar kind of view and experience. And I think this is something that this is the beginning of my angel journey for me. And frankly, at the very beginning, I was in denial. I used to tell everyone, look, what I do is no, I have very little money. I don't qualify as an angel by all the rules at the time. But hey, we have, but in time, this evolved to be a like proper business angel. Apologies, I need to plug in my computer. I've just seen, so you will see
no
off
problem.
the screen for about for a few seconds in order to take my charger and
No problem.
and
Take
plug
your
my
time.
machine. I did not. I need to just find that.
Take your
It's
time.
not that
No
difficult.
problem.
Just another 10 minutes, if you don't mind.
So basically, you started your business angeling. Yeah, maybe I'll shut up until you come back, because I don't know if you hear me. Welcome back.
Yeah, and it's safely plugged in.
So basically, you started your business angel adventure in a pretty complex way, right? So you started with advice. You also invested money, and you also built a syndicate. So you brought other angels and built a syndicate to invest in the startup. So it was a pretty complex
you're
thing.
right. It was quite complex, but it was driven by the fact that I did not have enough money. So by the sheer definition of angel, which meant having $1 million in cash or 200K or above a yearly revenue, I was not quite there at the time when I started to do this, and it was partly by choice, because when I became let's say I graduated from Regina Maria. In other words, I got fired. Uh, what happened with me at the time is that I by choice I thought, hey, I can be a consultant. Of course, I can make more than 200K if I really want to, but I did not want to. I realized that why not? I just spend a bit of my time and I use the money that I had that was okay, was good money to invest in a number of startups, but being very clear about I don't have enough money to invest by spray and pray, but only to invest where I see the opportunity to advise as well. So my first batch of investments were exclusively in companies where I had a one-on-one contact dialogue with a founder CEO at least once every 2 months, detailed enough to be able to basically talk them through a few ideas that I had about how to grow the company faster.
Okay, super interesting, super interesting way to go into angel investing. So not starting with money, but starting with knowing the founders, knowing the business, gaining trust that they can really execute, right? They can really achieve their vision, and help them to do that. Consult them basically to do that.
Yeah, because as a consultant, I was then, busy maybe a third of my time, the rest of 2/3.
Yeah.
Guess what? I was doing
Yeah.
exactly the same thing, but without being paid, but only with potentially me putting some money. And potentially me putting some money meant that I was doing sort of free advice mentorship for a larger number of startups, and I chose to invest only in a handful of them. And I think that gave me a special angle. That probably is one of the explanations why, in my initial portfolio, the success rate was abnormally high.
What do you mean by
that? And of course, the fact that I'm really a lucky guy.
But what do you mean unusually high? You invested in how many startups? If you can be open about this, no problem. If
I think at the time, at the time, I think there were 7 or 8 in that
okay.
initial batch. If you want,
first batch.
out of the Regina Maria stock option package, because I'm thinking of what was the amount of money that I invested. It was the stock option package of Regina Maria, and then the exits came. So there is a subsequent batch that is coming, if you want, out of the frou exit, or and so on. But so in that batch, there were, I think, 7 or 8 investments that I made, and yeah, that's.
And how many failed?
Wow.
One failed.
One failed, and even that was not total failure. It was a guy that a mentee of mine. He was doing a sort of marketing automation business. He was a senior manager in the marketing operation business in Central Europe, in a Central European country. And the company that he was working for decided suddenly that they would go west as opposed to go east. And that's when my friend said, look, I'm coming back to Romania. We're going to replicate this business model. And when they decide to come back, look at towards the east, rather than entering the market greenfield, they would buy us.
Yeah.
The guy was very smart. He's very smart. The proposal made perfect sense. So I chose to invest, and I spent time with him on how to do it and try to help a little bit here and there. Fundamentally, what happened is that there are some differences between the Polish, Czech, Hungarian market and the Romanian market at the time. So the business reached a level where he could have a small team and get a salary, but it did not get into exponential growth. So at some point, this is a smart guy. So at some point, this guy realizes, hey, this can continue like this, but it's going to be a waste of my time and a waste of basically your time as well. I want to refocus on something and start something else from scratch. At this moment, if I liquidate the firm, I can only pay you like 70 cents for every dollar invested to take it back, or you can leave it with me to go into my next venture. And at that moment, I chose the money. So I chose to get 70 cents for a dollar and withdraw. 70 cents is a failure because it's not like you got not even a 1x multiple, but it's not like a complete failure by losing.
It's not zero.
That you have to. So it's not zero. Yeah. So I think I got a pretty good deal. All the rest of the investments that I have made turned into a significant profit or are en route to turn. I mean, they are large enough and grown enough in order to turn into a significant profit.
Excellent. That means that the methods you used to select for the methods used for picking, right? In the VC world, there are those 3 stages, like sourcing, picking, and winning, right? You had some good methods to pick the startups you invest in. So some criteria, right, to evaluate the investment opportunity. But most likely also had a role in the winning phase. You probably did not stop at investing, but also are supporting them after post-investment, right? So what criteria do you use or did you use to evaluate the opportunity, to make the investment decision?
First of all, I have to say 2 things. One, investing is like dating. You're basically dating whoever accepts your date proposal. So the large majority supposedly would not every now and then. So you would not necessarily be successful every time when you have an attempt to invest. It may not be the right time. You may just come with the inception of the idea of getting investment into a company that was not ready for that. And it was quite the case a few years back when, angel investment was not so popular. And this, fast track through stages of the business with the help of angels and funds and, making it liquid and growing indefinitely was not the top of mind, if you want, for entrepreneurs, even for tech entrepreneurs at the time in Romania. So you don't get, it's like elections. You don't get to vote the best candidate. You get to vote the best candidate that runs in the elections. So, and that's quite a difference. So and many of them, would not necessarily be looking at my way. Would be looking. We're looking, if you want, the way of people that were significantly wealthier and carried the larger reputation for the size of their ticket that they could put. So I thought what I can compensate that with. So I took a very, let me talk to you about your business and ask you some questions and basically just carry a conversation that the back of my mind would be for you a sample of the kind of discussions that we would have if I were to invest in your company. And if you would then open enough to share some issues with me, and then I would be, from my experience, coming up with some ideas, some proposals, eventually some contacts, some things that I would run differently, have some different approaches, whatever. And then if you would see some value in that, then there is a chance that you would consider, once you decided to raise a round, to open that round for a small ticket from my side as well. So pretty much that was the mechanism on my side to go through this now. And if I'm looking of the criteria, that the concrete criteria that were on my side. So of the pool of available potential investments, what would be the ones that I would pursue? And again, if you look at the method that I used, of the pool of potential discussions that I would carry about, how interesting your business is for potential investment and how your business could grow much faster, the ones where I would put more resources and more time into scaling it, I would be looking primarily on, let's say, business maturity of the entrepreneur. And by business maturity, I don't mean white beard and a bald head, but I mean, have they run a business before? Have they run at least some teams before? Are they good and understanding market and commercials? Because I think you can be a brilliant technical mind, but if you don't put together how commercial traction is being created, how commercial traction is being executed, then probably you have you have a technology that's up for sale. No, you don't have a company that's up for investment. So with that thinking in mind, I looked for well-rounded, mature individuals that are able to run a business. And then I was looking for something, and I had no idea how it's called up until a couple of years back when raising money from FinTechOS, I heard it from one of my investors, which is called founder market fit. I didn't know it was called founder market fit, but I wanted the founder, the CEO, to be reasonably knowledgeable and ideally an expert in the market that their product or service targeted. And this is absolutely necessary because, the first idea may be, not the best. It may be the best idea from my point of view and from the founder point of view, but the market out there would say, dude, I'm not going to pay money for this or whatever. So then you have to have your knowledge of the market in order to be able to pivot, to understand who makes money how, who you can partner with, who are the main players, how is the buying process organized if it's a B2B, how is the customer thinking of the business, of the whatever consumer product that you're offering, if it's a B2C or an app or something. So I think this is about not that much about the product market fit. And finally, I think this is something that is valid for any investor in any time, anywhere. Who's going to be doing the next round after I have invested? And that is, the first step towards the exit opportunity. So there are two things. One is long-term. Who the heck would buy this company one day 100% for a large amount of money such that, I make money with my investment? Is there a conceivable scenario where that happens? Is this going to become a market leader in a particular niche, being number one or number two to be acquired by a private equity? Or is this something that would spark enough interest if it grows big enough for one of the global leaders, European leaders, to be an acquisition target? And these are the two standard scenarios. The third standard scenario, which is an IPO on a large market, or even more recently a smaller IPO on the Romanian Stock Exchange, I think this is more like a reserve, was more like a reserve scenario. Although it became in time a bit more attractive because the market started to move in that direction and to provide more liquidity in that kind of investments. But this is okay. Long-term exit, short-term. This company that I'm putting my, I don't know, 20, 50, 100K now, how long with the current round will they have money for? And at the end of that route, will they be in a position to raise the next round that is at least 3x? And how much clarity do I have on that route? I mean, it has to be clear. That's not
Great.
a distant future.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
a few steps ahead. And if the company stagnates between now and that moment when they need to raise the next round, a flat round is not something that looks well. An extension round is not something that looks well. It's something, so you have to think of, hey, what are my expectations that this company will be in a position to grow with the money that we have provided to the next stage. And ideally, that next stage being something that looks like a Series A, but hey, that's
Great. So, first of all, to recap these three things, because they are extremely important, I think, for our audience. So, first of all, it's the founder.
founder being a businessman.
Business
person, sorry.
Having business expertise, basically, not
being
just
a business
tech
person.
guy, but someone who can put a product into the market, can build a go-to-market strategy, can sell. So, second, product, founder market fit. So again, the founder has expertise in the market he's going to sell in, basically. He understands the market.
3x to the next round, 10x to X.
Yeah, super clear. So having a clear route for the next, a clear strategy, step-by-step strategy for the next round, and then to exit, to company exit, not your exit, right? Or your exit.
Well, the two are linked. The two are linked. I'm thinking of hey, when would the CEO be in a position to sell or to make the company liquid?
Great, clear. Another key point when we're looking at evaluating investment opportunities, another key point that appears very often in discussions is the valuation of the company. Is the valuation right? Is it too high? And especially in these market conditions, valuation is always a subject to discuss. How do you know the valuation is fair? The valuation sets you to a good return on investment, right? How do you know this?
You don't. A good friend of mine once said, as angels, we are mere donors. It's only when the exit comes that we become investors. So for us, if you want, the valuation is something that basically we accept. More recently, and we accept it based on, supply and demand, basically. Unfortunately, it's supply and demand. So if you look at the peak multiples and investment of 2021, you couldn't invest into anything if you were very picky about the valuation. Yeah. Nowadays, perhaps you can be a little bit more picky, but early stage rounds, at least in Romania, there is clearly there's clearly they may be clearly more willingness to invest as opposed to demand for good investments. So I expect that the large majority of the early stage rounds are still potentially overpriced at this moment, which means, of course, you still have to make your call into what is the valuation like. But I have some rules of thumb. And I have grown these rules of thumb more recently. And I think whatever rules of thumb I was using 5 years ago don't apply anyway, because that was a completely different market in terms of startups compared to what I have. But there is one thing that is quite the same. I make the assumption that the company will grow with the amount of money raised in the current round over the next 18 to 36 months into the next round. And that next round has to be triple. Do I see a scenario where in that round, that is, a rational valuation would lead to that triple thing? And the beauty of it is that at some point, typically at Series A, companies tend to move from, let's say, beauty contest kind of criteria into metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So is this company able to deliver a 1 million ARR to support the idea that, because this is like the typical anchor for a Series A. Okay, will this company be able to deliver 1 million ARR with the current investment round? And if so, in how long? And what does this mean for the valuation that the company will have at that time? Discount that back.
Mm-hmm.
Consider the risk, consider the value, and then you go to the you answer basically the question of, should I be investing at the current round? Now, things are getting worse for the angels, because in many cases we do not invest in priced rounds. We invest in convertibles.
Yeah.
So our only gain is basically the 20-25% discount plus interest, no or not plus interest, to the next round. And the next round is actually a qualified round, and when a venture a capitalist would enter with a more sizable thing, which means that we are actually then in a beauty context of qualifying ourselves as angels for the sole benefit of having the chance to invest and a small discount. And this means basically that the only thing that the rationale that I have to take is, hey, I'm going to put this money, and my chance of them having the next round should be 80%, just to balance things up. And that makes it a bit more tricky. That makes it a bit more tricky because the large majority of the companies that are getting convertible rounds to get to that next round are not necessarily at 80% chance of growth or significant growth. I'm not talking about 80% chance of survival. They're probably at 80% chance of survival. So yes, I think as a class, as an asset class, angels at this moment, we're at a disadvantage from that point of view. Because, hey, we only have access in certain conditions. And we only have access in certain conditions sometimes, and this is, you know it very well, because that's why probably you started Grow Channel, only in aggregated amount at a large enough, significant enough level in order to make an impact. Yeah, because nobody will talk to you for 20,000 anymore, or for 10,000 and so on. So you have to talk about 200,000. And for that, you have to create a structure to syndicate among a number of larger agents. Sometimes it's true. I'm using, if you want, my reputation, or in order to qualify in investment rounds by myself. Yeah, so by myself, although there's a significant difference between how much money I can put on the table and how much a fund can put on the table during a round. But hey, if you want to have me as part of the structure, give me the chance to put a 40,000 ticket in this business now. But that's a judgment on their side as well. Okay, how much do I want to fragment my cap table? How many shareholders do I want to have there? And it's not a safe bet. Many would say, no, dude, because basically your contacts are mostly in Romania. Let's say it's not necessarily the case, but and I only want to do it in the States. So if I take an individual angel, it's going to be a guy from the States that has a good network there.
Many of the people in our audience, as we are targeting, we are trying to communicate with those high net worth individuals that could invest in startups, and they're not doing it yet, right? So many of them are anchored in diverse industries, and they know the valuation methods used for more mature companies, right? For stock or for I don't know, private equity sometimes. How would you advise them? Because when they move into this early stage tech startups universe, basically
sometimes in order to
almost
learn
everything
something,
they know. So
sometimes
almost
in order to
everything they
learn something,
yeah.
sorry, you haven't finished. Sorry, I was rushing to answer.
No, it's okay, please.
Okay. Sometimes in order to learn something, you have to unlearn something. And my background of understanding, if you want, the business as such is, yeah, sure, I'm a computer engineer by formation millions of years ago when I graduated my university. But I grew through traditional business. I had private equity investors in Regina Mania when I was on the board and running the show there. I know how they think. I know valuations. I know M&A valuations. I know how, basically everyone who has done valuations will tell you that, hey, you have to do some DCF analysis and you have to look discounts to today, all the future cash flows, da 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 da. And you consider what would be a typical terminal value and bring it down. So everybody knows that. Yeah. But is this kind of understanding useful in your endeavor to invest in a technology startup in an uncertain, complex, volatile, and ambiguous universe? See the VUCA initials there? Probably not. So, what can I replace it with? So, the only thing that I can practically replace it with is a number of rules of thumb that the market, in its magnificent supply and demand game, is using as proxies for what seed, pre-seed investments, valuations are. And then it's only up to my own, if you want, understanding of the sector, understanding of the business, understanding of the founder and their experience, to some extent, understanding the pitch to judge, is this one of the top 20% available investments, such that if I invest, there is at least a good chance that I'm going to make it big? And this is a matter where all of us, we are a bit subjective. And there are some rules of thumb about how mature a business has to be at seed, whether they make or they don't make revenue, how big of a product is, how good the team is, how able the founder is to put together a professional team of that would help them, how rapid they can escalate the creation of a team, and they can escalate the commercial distribution if you are talking about something that has already is already having some commercial traction. And you tick those boxes and you read a lot to understand what other people are using in other jurisdictions. And funny enough, you follow the herd. Not every herd, you follow the herd of those that have a bit of an experience and have a bit of attraction and have invested before in good companies, or you follow the herd for those that you think they have a much better understanding than yours on a particular vertical, particular industry, particular structure. I do that. Other people do that, looking at what I invest in. So there is always that I follow, and I'm going there after X because I think X is good at that. So yeah, okay, maybe it's something that it's worth for me to pursue as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually an advantage that communities of angels have. Communities of angels kind of provide you automatically with that herding mechanism, and they allow you to also split your investment. And rather than having, I don't know, 3 investments of 50,000, you can have 30 investments of 5,000. Arguably more difficult to manage in your head if you have that many, because you forget how many there are.
Yeah. So basically, creating your I don't know, network of your trusted network of trusted colleague investors to consult with in different scenarios. Like, I don't have this sector, I don't have any expertise in this sector, but I like the founders. I need to understand the sector. Maybe some colleague understands the sector, and we discuss and come to a common ground.
Funny enough, I realized that these you call them GSPs or
GPS.
GPSs. You call them GPSs. I find this these pitching sessions to be quite enlightening because you see how someone with their business performs on stage, and it's always the other people that ask the questions that you don't think of. And I find it very instructive for me to understand, like everybody else, you look at the questions that are asked by the people that are asked, you think that half of them, shouldn't have been asked because the answer is so obvious or whatever. But the other half, and you don't know which half from before, but the other half are actually very useful questions. And some of them you wouldn't have asked yourself. And this is very, very powerful, I think, because such sessions actually allow you to get a grasp on the founder's understanding of the business and the opportunity. And I think that gives you the better a better chance of evaluating whether this investment is for you or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Looking at the current market conditions, because we've been here for quite some time now, and there's still a lot of uncertainty in the market. How do you behave as angel investor given the current market conditions? So we're in a bear market, and what would you advise people to do? Especially those who are newcomers into angel investing. Should they wait? Should they I don't know, explore but not invest? Should they invest?
Well, I think, frankly, that you have to do things. I mean, life is short. You can't wait. You have to do things. Maybe you do less of, or you do more prudent or something, but just waiting and seeing, that's not a strategy of investment. That's a strategy of wait and see. And wait and see has never got anyone anywhere. It hasn't got them to bankruptcy either, but then again, that's up to you how much of your own wealth you're willing to invest. Ideally, not something that would bankrupt. So that being said, I think the best strategy, or actually the change that I had in my approach to investment is I'm basically trying to understand that it's slightly more difficult for companies once they reached this Series A, Series B level to raise those rounds. It takes much better products, it takes much better metrics, KPIs, in order to get there. And when you get there, the multiples that you get are significantly smaller compared to what used to be like 2 years ago and so on. But at the same time, you see in the market that this is not an asset class that is poised to disappear. It's not the capital deployed overall in VC has not dried out. In fact, is probably at the same level with 2019 or even slightly higher, which is huge. So very likely there are opportunities there. You have to just to be a bit more cautious in understanding when I'm talking about, what will this business be valued at Series A? When will a Series A be possible? Is this company able to reach Series A? And you give those answers and you come up with a number and you figure out whether investment in the current seed opportunity makes sense with those premises. And you will probably disqualify more opportunities based on that judgment.
Is angel investing suitable for any successful person? Because you need some money, right, to start doing this. Or are there certain I don't know, qualities an angel must have?
Well, I think it depends. That's my every MBA student definitely learns this as the first, that being the best single answer that you can give to any question. In fact, my students on the last class of global strategy that I taught had all very nice T-shirts with depende. It depends on the, which was like quite a statement. So I'm. It should be. The answer is it should be, because if you're doing it right, so you don't gamble, you invest. You're not doing it with the money that you need with your operational money. You're doing it with the allocated investment money in your whatever portfolio that you're gathering. You allocate to it a certain size of your investment portfolio. I mean, in Romania, it's quite popular that you have some uh, very low risk investments as well, like real estate or something like that. So maybe not all, your whole investment portfolio consists of angel portfolio, which is the rational thing to do, not necessarily what I do.
Our advice is 5 to 10% of your portfolio allocated to this asset class, but obviously everyone
that is generally the financial advisor kind of thumb. I definitely don't do that. For me, the percentage is significantly higher. Why is that? Because I think, like basically it worked for me so far, that I can extract a much higher return out of this category of investment, not by having the return on each particular investment, but by creating a portfolio where my return is significantly higher. So that's for me my judgment, especially in the first stage of my investment history. I'm in a second stage where I can't possibly spend advisory time with my investees. So that kind of I expect to diminish the returns of the current investment pool significantly, but I think it's still something that we have to consider. So in my case, I invest a lot more, but I understand the risk of it. It is risky. You invest the amount of money that you can lose, and you consider it lost up until they reach the point of exit, which typically, if you invest early stage, is not very soon. So I think this is for me is more practical than the 10% rule, because it can be 30%. Yeah, as long as it follows this kind of path.
So invest the money that you afford or you're willing to lose, or consider them lost until you exit.
Yeah.
And in this asset class, time to exit, it's pretty long. This is not a very liquid asset class. You have long time to exit, and you don't really control the exit moment. Other than this, what other advice do you have for people that are looking to enter into this asset class? What would be some good first steps? I want to. Okay, interesting. It's interesting. You captured my attention. How should I start? What should I do?
I'd recommend that you start with micro investments in areas that you understand operationally, or in technologies that are adjacent to the area that you have been successful in. So if you've been successful in the finance world, look at fintech. If you have been successful in real estate, look at proptech. If you have been successful in production, making something a factory that sells look at things that are automating production or something like that. And I think this way you understand better. You can step in and help with a bit of advice every now and then, and you can have a better grasp of understanding at least the value chain and how these guys can be successful or not. It's always a good sign if people that are understand the industry are investing, and the bad sign if people who understand the the sector, the vertical, are opting out, saying that this guy, I understand a bit of this
Yeah.
industry, I'm not going to do it. That's why, if you want, at Cleverage VC, we are having healthcare industry people advising on the health tech, because obviously they understand if technology, how nice it would look like, has chances of being exploited commercially and has a chance of go to market and be adopted, and so on, probably better than ours. So I think this is fundamentally the way the way I recommend you to start. And I don't think you have to be necessarily in your target group for that. I mean, 1 to 5 million, whatever, 5 to 10% of your, okay. In order to start with micro investments, the 2,500, the 5,000, the 10,000 kind of investment, you just need to be the average dude in their 40s that belongs to the middle class and has some savings, because I think this might be, I'm looking at it in a different way as well. This might be you flirting with your next career. You're a professional, you're a manager, significant, quite a senior manager, not the top CEO, whatever, but senior manager in a particular industry. You understand that industry, and hey, you have some savings. Yeah. Well, maybe perhaps rather than buying your third studio for rental, or then building your summer house in I don't know which near resort or something like that, maybe you consider of, hey, let's start have some investments in some of these companies that I understand, because one of them may be the route to some independence. When you start looking at this more effervescent market of technology as an enabler for a particular vertical that you understand, you may see opportunities that others haven't seen, and you may actually become a co-founder in the next endeavor of somebody. But everything, every 10,000-mile journey starts with the first step. And in this particular case, the first step, put a bit of money, a bit of skin in the game, on the game of technology enabling the sector that you understand something about.
Great. We also have a few questions I see now in the comments. We're a bit over our time, but I think we can manage to close pretty fast. Roxandra, she's saying you talked about local ecosystem, local systems with more complex regional and international systems, comparing them basically. What would be one of the most underrated local strengths to focus on when expanding towards a larger ecosystem?
If I knew, I would have invested. Definitely.
That's a tough question.
I think, well, there is one, and I'm investing in it, obviously, and I'm actually coordinating the investment, and that's obviously the health tech area. I think, but I'm not good at it, so don't follow me for that. I think agri-tech is important in the local scene, and I would follow everything that has anything to do with that, because there are things that are happening in the local market that would probably give access to money, and would create technologies that can be replicated somewhere else. I'm pretty sure in the aftermath of the Ukraine war, we are talking about military tech, but I have absolutely no clue how to do anything with that. So this is something that I am I'm not really an expert in. I think there is an overrated business of platforms of all kinds that tend to be very successful at global level if they start from one of the global hubs. So we're going to be the next Facebook or the next I don't know, Crunchbase. and you start out of Bucharest, and you're confined to the Bucharest ecosystem or the Romanian ecosystem, is probably less prone to success than others. But I would look very much for businesses where the founder's understanding of the local market is not dissimilar to how the global market looks like. I know it's very abstract, but it's kind of a filter. If our local ecosystem in a particular industry, I don't know, is very, very dissimilar to what the global ecosystem looks like, don't go. If it's something that is similar, go. I'll give you an example that is closer to perhaps my more recent expertise in fintech. Well, if you have something that is creating opportunities in commercial banking or in retail banking or in SME banking, that is where the Romanian ecosystem is quite similar to any other ecosystem in the universe. If you're talking about investment, like wealth management, there isn't that much private banking in Romania, right?
Yeah.
There isn't that much investment. Probably the guys in Luxembourg that are starting their startup would understand the ecosystem slightly better. Yeah. So this is where this is where I'm kind of trying to understand what is worthwhile in terms of investment when it comes from here, or actually more valuable or has better chances of being successful. In terms of underrated, there aren't that many things where underrating really applies to Romania. Romania is already to a large extent overrated because of the UiPath history. So hey, everybody's kind of hunting the next UiPath, so that creates big expectations for people. But yeah, health tech, definitely. Agri-tech, definitely. Mil-tech, or how military tech, or how it's called, definitely. Green energy tech might be something that is globally still an underrated opportunity, because, and this is actually coming with a very, very interesting thing. More and more, the larger funds are forced by their decision of compliance, by their decisions of choosing investment criteria to be a sort of ESG fund.
Yeah.
That is not only about the portfolio, ticking the ESG boxes, but it is to a large extent about, how can we create and finance things that have an impact in this particular space. And I think the space is still underrated because there is a massive amount of capital that is waiting for opportunities to arise in this particular sector, in automating ESG, if you want, and they don't have what to invest in. In a completely different area, the huge success of Hidroelectrica's IPO is primarily linked with large private equity funds, large hedge funds, because it's not private equity, seeking investment in something that is large, and there aren't that many large and green assets that one can invest. Hence, everybody jump on Hidroelectrica. In a different way, similar, you see a similar thing that is touching on ESG tech.
So basically, you have higher the demand is higher than the supply, and if you're a founder,
where the trend is upward, where the trend is something that is certain enough, so there's a certainty of this trend happening, but it's quite at the beginning, and there is the upside potential is huge.
Great. Claudio asks, would you say your approach back then when you started angel investing, your approach is still possible today with a similar budget?
No, with a larger budget, but yes, it's still possible.
And Stephanie asks, to what extent do the personalities of the founders count when considering investing in startups?
I think they do, but not in a not obviously don't invest in assholes. I think that's don't try to avoid working with them. I think that's quite straightforward. I think when you have multiple founders, how the team works together, I think that's very interesting. And you have to have the feeling that these guys are, or ladies, whatever they are. I'm using the general guys, would have the chemistry and would be working together through, good
Tough
times and
times.
bad times.
Yeah.
I think also if you want to play a more of an active angel role, so if you want to coach them, in fact, at the beginning when that was criteria for me in choosing my investments, I was looking for coachability as a something that I was looking in founders, because obviously I wanted to be able to chat with them, and I had wanted to have the feeling that they would be eventually understanding and considering what I said, not necessarily follow, because hey, it's still their company, but understand and consider as to what I would be I would be doing. I think not personality but character.
Mm-hmm. Do you look for? I'll extend a bit the question. Do you look for other I don't know, precise characteristics? Like, do you look for grit? Do you look for? You already said they need to be coachable. Are there some other characteristics that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, obviously, especially if you're investing a small amount through a platform, you basically don't know the founders that well to really exercise that kind of judgment. In the the cases where you're actually getting directly into the cap table and you spend more time with the founders, then you understand, is this something that where are we going to when difficult times come, would we be able to work together and solve those things together? So I think that's that's the important criteria, but not. I think having the founders be persons of good character. I think that's that's something that is yeah, that is something that you have to, and people of that would be true to their words in dealing with others. They would have built a reasonably good reputation and not destroy it with stupid things. Ideally, these are the things that are relevant. And in fact, in larger businesses, it's part of the due diligence that you do. And when you invest in larger rounds, there is always some due diligence on people that have worked with these particular founders in the past. What are they talking? What are they speaking about them? With a grain of salt and so on. And what experience of previous investors have been with these guys and so on. So I think this is something that you have to consider. And it's also similar, because if you start being a business angel and investing in companies, you also build a reputation as an investor. Yeah. And there is always an alternative reputation of dark angels who are abusing of predatory practices in typical situations of, okay, you invest, you get something like 10-15%, the company runs out of money and they are desperate to raise some more money, and then you start extending your position in the cap table, reaching, I don't know, 30-40% to the level that subsequent rounds become very unlikely, because the cap table makes the company quite non-investable.
Yeah.
And perhaps you're just using traditional business practices when you're looking for a larger share in that company, because they basically need more money and you have the money and they don't. But fundamentally, you deteriorate that company's ability to raise more capital when you do it. So guess what? You should abstain, even if that is really bad for the company.
And on this bombshell, we're going to close our discussion. Sergiu, it was a pleasure to have you here, and there are many insights throughout this discussion. Thanks a lot. and good luck in your angel investing endeavors and in your entrepreneurial endeavors. And all the best.
Thank you, Adrian. I think I appreciate a lot what you're doing, and I appreciate a lot the need for a stronger investment ecosystem in Romania. And I think this capacity of syndicating investments that you're providing for, let's say, beginners, business angels, and for those that perhaps don't have a huge investment capacity, so they prefer to fragment their investments with you, and organizing the dialogue with the startups carry a more important social role than the third one. And this is about bringing more people in the ecosystem, because the ecosystem needs more capital. The ecosystem needs more founders. The founders need more advice and connections into the real industry that is making money and turning money. There is more need for investment in the funds that are being raised out of Romania because they target Romanian investments. There is a larger need for expertise as operational partners by these funds in helping those startups through the subsequent stages. And what we are doing now, and basically what you have been doing for the last couple of years with GoChannel, is that you have created a part, you're supporting one important part of that ecosystem. And with all of us doing more of that, and with us, all of us, and this is very important, having interests that are common, having investment in the same companies, in the same funds, it is in our common interest to grow the ecosystem together, such that it's not the neighbor's goat that dies, but we have here a large collection of goats, sheep, cows, and something that need all to grow, and in this way we're all wealthier. And I think with us being wealthier comes a lot of advantages in what a wealthy society means. So good luck with that.
Super agree with that, and thank you again for accepting our invitation, and looking forward to collaborate further in growing this ecosystem.
Definitely. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a very nice dialogue. Thank you.
All the best to all of you.